Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Canada IQI Canada Facebook Live Evening Talk. Today we are going to speak about a specific type of transaction, which is a property which is on sale on assignment, and every sale there are two ways to look into it: one from buyer's perspective and one from seller's perspective. Today we're going to talk about from buyer's perspective. Today we have with us Yousaf Iqbal, country head IQI Canada. Welcome, Yousaf.
Thank you very much, Junaid. First of all, happy Navroz to everybody who is celebrating from the family of Juwai IQI. Also, today is the International Day of Happiness. So, happy International Day of Happiness.
Happy New Year to
And
everyone.
the weather is so nice. It's beautiful. It's 15 degrees out there.
I think it's a start of the spring, I guess.
It's start of the spring, something which we've been waiting for.
Exactly. So, Yusuf, today, the in a typical buy and sell, most of the transition happens as either people are buying as a pre-construction property, which is
Yes,
directly from developer, and the second part is a second type of transaction is basically buying a ready property at secondary market.
that's right.
But there is a third type, which is basically a lot of people who have bought from developer directly, but before the closing, they want to sell it to someone else. That's called assignment sale.
Yes.
So what when I say assignment sale, what does it mean? What does assignment sale means in a simple language?
Sure. Just so assignment sale, as you mentioned right now, when somebody is buying a property from a developer, from a builder, they would get a clause which is called an assignments clause. And what an assignment clause typically means is that you can sell your property before closing. That's what a typical assignment sales means of that. Now, an assignment clause, which is being given to the sellers. There is a certain time period where they need to exercise their assignment clause, which they can do it with the builder's approval before closing.
Okay, so effectively, if I have booked in a property through a developer, and is near completion, let's suppose 6 months from now, I have an option to sell it to a third person, and the third person who is going to be a buyer of assignment property is going to buy it and close it with developer. Effectively, I will get what I pay to the developer, and then I can sell it to third party. So it's interesting because right now what's happening is that a lot of buyers are there, and necessarily they cannot find a ready property, so they can look to buy a property on assignment. Now, when so today we talk out about specifically from buyer's perspective. So it's
Yep.
important uh, because sometimes this is not a very what I have experienced in my dealing with my clients. Today I got a call from a client who asked me about a lot of specific question about assignment sale, and a lot of time, a lot of the realtors, even the lawyers, are not very aware of all the factors to be taken care of, because if you have not worked on assignment sale before, it's not that simple. So where do you start from? How do we make sure that we as an audience, today's audience, can understand what are the key factors include in assignment sale? To begin with, if I were a buyer and if I see some property on the sale or assignment, what are the first three things I should look for?
Very good question, Jeanette. So, as you know, a typical sale and assignment work is that, as you said, that a seller would buy a property at a certain price, and then before closing, they want to, sell the property at a profit. So basically, a seller has typically given up a deposit, and that deposit could be anywhere between 10%, 15, or 20%. On that. Sometimes they're given 10 or 15%, and 5% is due upon occupancy. Now that's very important. Who's going to take the occupancy of this property? Is it the seller who is taking the occupancy of the property and then passing this to the assignment buyer, or is it the assignment buyer who is going to be doing the having the property on that? Now, a few things to consider when we talk about the assignment sale is that we got to keep in mind when doing an assignment sale, as you said, it's not a typical buy and sell. The reason is that it involves lawyers, it involves developers, it involves a lot of other things. So to start with, first thing, a lot of people ask is that, you know what, I've got a property which is listed for example, $500,000. You know, it's an assignment sale. Uh, how do I just put an offer of, you know, 500 or $510,000? How does it work? So things to consider is that the seller has paid a deposit to the developer or a builder on that, plus they're asking for a profit. Now the deposit which is already credited with the builder, that deposit needs to be paid by the buyer to the seller, okay, plus the profit. Now there are various things to consider. Are we closing this assignment sale before the occupancy? You know, so the technicality comes in there is that because you got to come up with that cash on that, because it's just not, you know, sometimes a bank may approve a higher amount, sometimes they would not. So things to consider, especially for an assignment sale, is the deposit plus the profit. Now, for example, if you have given a deposit on $500,000 home, let's suppose you've given a deposit of, you know, 20%, which is, you know, $100,000, for example. Now, and the profit on top is it's a $50,000, which a seller is looking for. So typically, you got to do $150,000. Number one. Number two thing, you got to do two closings here. Number one closing is that you got to have a closing done for an assignment sale, and then you got to do an actual closing, which will happen at the time when the closing happens. So actually, sometimes it could go up to three closings. So why three closings? One is the closing on the assignment. One is a smaller closing with on the occupancy, because still getting a lawyer involved, putting up the occupancy fees, and then doing a closing actually at the time of the final closing, which could take any time between, you know, a month to 6 months on that.
So this important factor you said that you have to look at what original price the buyer had bought it and what price seller. What's the difference between the original purchase price and the actual selling price on assignment sale? Because when the buyer at an assignment sale is going to go to the bank for mortgage approval, that factor will play the role, because if its valuation has gone up, because that valuation will give you an idea about how much profit you're paying is justified or not, because the bank will not finance what is the market value uh, that easily until the value has increased to that extent. Second is how much deposit has been paid by the original buyer to the developer. And of course, I think the one more factor we should also consider, we always say, is that is the completion date. Because let's suppose I book today and my completion is 2 years from now, and if I try to sell right now, because a lot of buyers are right now trying to buy a property which is, because when it is not easy for buyers to get the property directly from the developer, so they're trying to buy from the assignment. So how much the difference, where the buyer should, what sort of property should buyer should buy in terms of the completion date? Is it should be, what's the duration
So
we should consider?
very good question, Junaid. Now, lately we have seen that we are getting a lot of assignment sale which will close maybe, you know, 1 year from down and 2 years down the line on that. Very important point you raised right now is about the assessment and the value and the appraisal of the property on that. Now, if you are actually going to the bank and doing an appraisal value today of that property of the assignment sale, okay, that's good enough. You got an approval based on that. But is this approval valid all the way towards the closing or not? Now, typically, some banks would do it. They will make you the closing, you know, they'll give you an approval all the way towards the end of it. That means, you know, you've got the appraised value now. But what if the bank has given you a pre-approval right now to satisfy a builder's condition, where a builder requires a pre-approval on that, but the actual value uh, by the time you get a possession at that time, and for any reason that value for whatever reason is a little bit down, then you got to keep that extra money in your pocket in the assignment sale, because typically you are paying at today's price, and you know nobody has a magic ball. What could happen tomorrow? Seems like market will be going up, but what if there is some sort of a little correction in that couple of months or 2 3 months? Now when banks are appraising the properties, they are looking for the last 2 or 3 months of appraisal value at that time. So what happens is that, for example, you have bought a house for $600,000. typically paid for $500,000, and we're expecting that by that assignment will go up. It could go up to a little bit more high on that side. Now, not necessarily that would happen on there, right? So you got to be very careful as well when you are doing this assignment sales in terms of the time frame. Recommendation is that if you are buying an assignment sale at a property, try to buy it, if it's coming close to the assignment, because that way you could get the realistic appraisal value.
So effectively, anything less than 6 month completion is something you should consider.
I
Closer
completely
closer to the position is better, but also important for the buyer to and his buyer agent to go and visit the site and see where exactly what's the status of the construction.
That's
Of
right.
course, you cannot go inside, but you can always look from outside and basically inquire from the developer where do we stand in terms of the percentage completion and how much time we both require to get to the completion. Because there's no point buying an assignment property if it's year or a year and a half or 2 years down the line. So you can just wait. Because there are a number of factors, there are a number of moving parts, as you said, the mortgage, evaluation, and the completion, and you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow with the market. It may go up, it could go down, it could stay the same. Nobody knows. Now, in terms of the so so when you say that there are a number of factors involved, it seems like it's not simple as the secondary buying. So how do we? So who are the players involved? You said buyers, the seller,
Good. So the players involved is the buyer, the seller, the buyer lawyers, the seller lawyers, and the builder's lawyer, because three people are involved.
and developer. I guess it builds a
Yeah, the
developer.
developer, the builder, right? So the people who's going to assign you that, because once you are exercising assignment sale and assignment clause, the builder needs to qualify, again, as per the original requirement which was done when the property was bought by the seller. Another thing is that most of the time, some of the things which we commonly people ask is that, what sort of conditions should we put up on any of the assignment sales? And I tell them, typically number one thing is that before that people ask us, do I need a lawyer for an assignment sale? Yes, you need a lawyer for an assignment sale, because that person who's negotiating on your behalf will have to make sure that any of the terms and condition, any of these documents, the original document which was the lawyers, the builders agreement, that needs to be reviewed as well. So yes, you need a lawyer, number one thing. Number two thing is that terms and conditions is that you should have a review attached to your assignment sale as a condition, that you need to review not just the assignment sale document but the original document as well. Number one. Number two thing is that you need to understand that what are the charges associated with this assignment sale. Are you closing this property? When you're closing this property, is there additional development charges, which most of the properties would have? What are these additional development charges? Who is paying the typical and assignment fees on that? Is there also an occupancy fees on that? Like, how much you should expect in terms of the occupancy fees? Also keep in mind, there could be delays as well, which is a different, you can't put as a condition, but those are the things to consider as well. So number one thing is that a law review. Number two thing is that an approval from the builders lawyers on that. Number three things is that the Schedule B, which is in an assignment sale form, is very important, that how the money would be distributed in that terms, because right now you are paying a deposit which was paid to the builder. So that's a credit which you will be getting on your mortgage, number one. Number two thing is that how is that distributed? Now, are you giving the full closing, as I said, profit before the occupancy, before the closing? That means on a certain date when you are closing the property, you're giving that money out. Second part comes in, that is it coming on the occupancy? Is it coming on that? So again, very thoroughly, it is required to understand any of these, charges, so that they don't come to you as a surprise at the time of closing, because it's not only development charges, there are other charges which are associated as well, Junaid. And these charges could be an additional utility bill, another utility company coming along on that, or they say we'll be having under contract an air condition, it's going to be a contract on your furnace, it's going to be a contract on your water heater, on things. And those are things which you should ask and consider, and you should put a lawyer on that. These are at least the minimum sort of conditions which you should have on assignments.
Therefore, as you rightly said, Yusuf, there's a number of factors, and therefore it's important for before you even put an offer, one should ask for a copy of the full version of agreement of purchase sale, which we call APS, which was signed and initially between the developer and the original buyer, who is a seller now, and that document has to be reviewed by a lawyer first before we even put an offer, because it's very important to consider all those aspects, all those costs, additional factors which the buyer is going to end up paying at the time of closing with the developer. So a lot of time, because with the current market rush and the emotional which people are why they're not being able to secure the property, they end up buying the property without considering those costs. And when it comes to closing, you will realize that okay, this is a additional cost which never considered, and you are out of pocket. So great.
And that's the reason, I've seen this so many times, Junaid, in my experience, that when you have a lawyer involved, especially from the buying side of it, on that, it makes so much difference that while the clauses, which are the hidden clauses, that lawyer will review the document, let you know, hey, this is what you could expect. For example, in terms of an assignment, can you add somebody's name? To the at the time of closing or not. Sometimes the builders would not allow you to do that. Sometimes people want to see whether can they do a second assignment on the property or not, right? So most of the time the builder might have a condition where they say, you know what, it's only one assignment allowed, and all of a sudden you are in a position where you're not able to close it, and you're thinking like, oh, I bought an assignment sale, I may be able to assign it to somebody else. No, you may not be able to assign somebody else. So you got to make sure that that clause is in there. If it's not, then you got to request for that clause from the builder, that hey, I need this clause in case I'm not able to close it. Second thing to consider is that a lot of time people think, you know what, I've got a property in my name at the time of closing. For any reason, if I'm not able to close, I'm not able to get a mortgage. You know what, I'm going to take out my name and just go put my wife's name, my cousin's name, anything like that. A lot of time builders don't allow you to do that. They don't allow you to take out your name. They may allow you to add additional names on it, but sometimes they may not even do that. I mean, those are so many factors to consider, and that's the reason when I say, Juwai IQI Canada, 150 years of experience, that's what I mean. Call us, contact us, get an opinion from us. We have done assignment sales, we have done resales, we have done commercial properties. Call us and we will guide you, will advise you that whether is it even worth going for an assignment sale or not. I mean, a first time home buyer, do you have that kind of a cash flow with you or not? And what are the things to consider at the time of closing?
Exactly. So as you said that IKEA with a lot of more than 150 years of experience, I mean, there are a lot of things which normally comes on a day-to-day basis. We also learn with the experience of people asking questions and we responding to them, and giving that we have relationship with the right partners, the lawyers and everybody else, we can always pick up the phone and clarify those aspects. Um, to just take this forward, normally assignment sales is associated with the pre-construction project. Is it true, or is there any other assignment can happen?
So assignment pre-construction projects, now there's a definition of pre-construction which has been defined by the people, is probably for high-rise or mid-rise buildings on that. Now assignment sales are typically given for any properties. It could be for a detached, it could be for a semi-detached, it could be for a townhouse, it could be for an assignment sales, sorry, for a pre-construction project on that. So not necessarily. The important things again is that how much deposit has been paid, what is the expected deposit by the builder, who is responsible for the occupancy fees, because that's a very important question. For example, if I am putting up a closing for say about May 1st, and the occupancy of that property comes in by 15th of April, so what happens in those 15 days? Am I able to close it in early than that, or who's paying the occupancy fees? I have not, technically I'm still not the owner of the property, because I'm waiting on an approval from the builder. And also keep in mind, very important factor, Junaid, you're looking that you have an occupancy, you have a fixed occupancy date, for example. An occupancy has been told to you that you will get an occupancy by the first week of May. Based on that, you said, you know what, I need to get into a property by first week of May. And I'm going to just give my notices, or I'm going to sell my house, whatever it is on that. But the problem is that you're waiting for a builder approval to come in. What if the builder approval takes a little bit longer time? then what happens? You're delayed on that. During that time, as I said, the occupancy fees is in their factor. Who's paying the occupancy fees? Who's not paying the occupancy fees on that? The actual closing time, you're expecting that the actual closing might happen immediately. A lot of people ask me this question, when is my closing going to happen? I was talking to one of my clients today, and his occupancy is coming on 3rd of May, and got another client in the same pre-construction condos. His closing is coming up in August. The reason is that they're on, one is on 30th floor, other one is on the 40th floor. So new 10 floor difference, and there is that. So they asked me all the question, what occupancy is coming along, like, do I go and find a tenant right away on that? Like, what do I need to do for my bank? I got a pre-approval, but now I got to go back to my bank, and my situation, things might have changed now. Am I getting a closing done right now on that? So those are the factors to consider, that typically anything from occupancy to closing, it could take 6 months, 8 months. I've seen that it could take a little bit longer as well, depending on what kind of situation you are in, because the builder has to hand over all the units, and after that if it's a condominium, then they have to register the condominium with the city, and then you're able to get the final closing date.
So I think it's a very, very good point you raised. I think for someone who's looking, there are a lot of people who are looking to consider options under assignment sale. They're a very good point that people should consider. Now, let's suppose I've put an offer, and the buyer accepts it, right? So buyer put an offer, seller accepts it, and then developer lawyer involved, and lawyers applied for the approval from development, and they also get an approval. And then you also said the Schedule B is a very important schedule or document which explains how the money will be distributed. So if you just take an example of, let's suppose the property is $1 million property, and the deposit has been $200,000 deposit has been paid, which is 20%, right?
Yeah.
And the buyer is buying this property at 1.1, which is $100,000 more than the original price.
That's right.
So, and let's suppose closing is going to happen on 30th June, right? So, other than the date issue, in terms of the amount, my question is more on the amount than the date right now. Is that if I have to pay $100,000 more, so $200,000 deposit, which I have to pay because the buyer already paid to the developer. That's something is exactly what, if I had booked it, I would have to pay anyway. But then that's had to be what stage and what time? Because you said that 3 or 4 different closings. The first closing is going to happen between on the assignment sale.
Sure.
So if I'm a buyer, I have to pay this at the time of the first closing.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good question, Junaid. One thing is that the buyer deposit, you got to keep in mind the deposit which seller has already paid to the developer or to the builder. That one which you are paying it right now to the seller is basically goes against as a credit which the seller has got on there, because seller has already paid that money on that. Number one. Number two thing is that the extra $100,000 deposit. Now that depends upon when is my closing scheduled for. For example, if I closing is scheduled, I know that the occupancy is going to happen end of May typically on that, and and we have decided that upon a builder approval, which is a 30 days from now, by the first week of April, or first week of May, we have put up a closing date on that, right? Now, on that particular closing date, there could be various scenarios which could be worked out. Number one scenario could be that on the date of the day you close an assignment sale, all the money is typically being routed to the lawyers, and is being given out. Sometimes you could also go to the extent by saying that, what, I'm going to be giving you the deposit right now, which you have already paid, but the profit will actually be given to you at the time of occupancy, or sometimes even at the time of closing. You understand what I mean? So it all depends like how the deal needs to be structured, and what is exactly the seller looking for, and also from the buyer's perspective, because sometimes you may have money coming out of when you sell a property, or you have money which will become to you as a gift from a family member, right? So you got to consider all those factors in mind. So that extra profit could be paid before occupancy, which involves the first closing. It could be done at the time of occupancy. Okay. It could be done at the time of closing as well on that.
I think it's very important factor from the buyer perspective, since today's program is about what are the factors the buyer should consider when doing these purchase on the assignment. So just to follow on the same question which I asked and the response you gave, is the deposit you are paying, is a reimbursement of deposit is paid by original buyer. That's something in the developer books, when the assignment sale is approved or transferred, it will come against your name. But the profit you are paying to the original buyer, who's a seller in this transaction, in the event if the project is not completed on time or get delayed or never completed. Because recently we have seen one case in the media where developer has sold the project and somebody bought the or unit in that project, an assignment, and now project is not completed and has been delayed. So in that case, the buyer who bought it and he paid the deposit, of course, is protected.
Yeah.
But the profit you paid to the seller, the original buyer, is gone.
So that is where a lawyer comes in very handy on that, Junaid. I mean, we are there to help you and guide you, but that is the reason we always say you should get the legal advice from the lawyers, in this scenario, because there could be various scenarios which could come along. As you said, you've already given out a profit. Sometimes it's a deposit. Sometimes you've already done you already paid all the profit upfront as well. And what happens if the closing is not being done by the builder, not by the seller? From the builder's perspective, they're not able, not it's not you. The builder has delayed the project, a builder decided not to do it. How do you get your money back? So that's a very, very, very technical question, and which we will discuss this next time when we have our legal counsel, Mr. Gujar, when he comes in. We should ask this question in terms of that. But these are the factors which you need to be very, very careful of while doing an assignment sale, because it's not a typical buy and sell. Another thing, Junaid, very important, you may not be able to see the property. There is no pictures. There is no PDI, which is known as a pre-delivery inspection, that has been done on the property. So you are actually buying a property, especially if you're going to live yourself, because you don't know what kind of you've seen the floor plan, looks nice, but what color selection has been done, because those color selection has been done a year, 2 years before the final occupancy is been given. So now, so these are few of the I would say, disadvantage or cons where, you are not seeing the property, but you're typically going in and putting up an offer and buying a property based on whatever is being communicated to you.
Yeah, Yusuf, thank you very much. Very good point raised, because it's important. That's why the lawyers are always important, but assignments has become more critical because there are a lot of factors that involved, a lot of legal documents involved. And as one of the things from our side, you said from realtor perspective that you shouldn't pay your profit until the closing of the possession. At least if you are sure that when you're paying that premium on the property, you can see the property delivery is imminent, right? And that you can see that. It's not that you can get out of the sale, because once the binding is done, its offers are done.
That's right.
But at least you're not running out of pocket if property is not delivered. Now, one thing which I also want to ask that what if like I think it's from seller perspective, from the buyer perspective, um, what are the other fees involved in this other than the assignment fees and the lawyer fees?
So again, in terms of the fees, from a buying perspective, it could be, as I said, it could be the final closing cost, which could come to you as a surprise, because on a typical, you will see a development charges maybe $5,000 to $7,000, but these additional costs which you need to do it. Plus, keep in mind, while you're closing it, you still got to do a land transfer tax. You got to do an occupancy fees till you get the actual closing going on. So what an occupancy fees typically means is that basically you have not closed the property and you're sort of paying a rent to the builder. And during that time, one more important factor, Junaid, is that, are you buying it for investment purposes? Are you allowed to have a right to lease during the time of occupancy? That is a very important factor to consider, because you're buying this property, say about it's an investment property, so you know what, I will rent it out at the time of occupancy. Now, a lot of time, a developer may or a builder may have an assignment sale, but not an occupancy clause available on that. So what it means is that you cannot rent it out at the time of occupancy, which is called it's called as lease during the time of during the time of occupancy. If that clause is not there, keep in mind, as I said, 1 month to 6 months or 8 months, or typically a little bit more than that. In pandemic, we have seen that how things got changed. Something which was supposed to be delivered in last year of April 20, was it April 2020, May 2020? It typically with our client happened, right, and went all the way to March on that.
Yeah.
And even at the time of March, when the occupancy was happening, before the occupancy, the PDI got delayed a couple of times as well, which is a pre-delivery inspection, because something or the other happening at the building on that. So those are the factors in consideration which you should keep in mind, because you will be paying that occupancy fees from your pocket, especially if you're not occupying on that. Number one. Number two thing is that another technical thing which I want to talk about, again, a law is the best one to judge about, is the HST on that, right? If you are buying it for investment purposes, what exactly are you declaring to the builder? Because the builder has paid an HST on your behalf to the CRA based on that. Now, if you are typically buying it for investment purposes, at the time of closing, that HST could be another additional cost which could come to you, which you need to pay. And then you can do a rental rebate, an HST rental rebate. That's a different subject altogether. But those are the things to consider as well. If you're buying it for yourself, on that.
Amazing. I think we have covered a lot of factors. We have covered a lot of factors from a buyer's perspective. I think we should do another program from a seller perspective. But I think thank you very much, Yusuf, for all the insight and all the experience, because this all comes with experience. As we always says, IQI Canada has got a team and a lot of experience, not only in typical secondary market or pre-construction, but also in assignment sales. If anybody has any question, please feel free to contact us. You have the numbers and email IDs. You can see. You can send a message directly to us, Junaid and Yusuf, myself, or contact our team, and we'll get back to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Junaid. What a great session, and everybody, please take care of yourself. Enjoy the warm weather. It's supposed to be around 20 degrees tomorrow. So fire up those barbecues and enjoy yourself.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care. Bye-bye.
Good evening. Bye bye.